Hey guys, it's Sign here with Hobbies and Man once again, and today we're going to be doing another book review. Today we're going to be looking at Unsouled, book 1 in the Cradle series. It's one of 12, if I remember correctly. And I read this month because I saw a lot of hubbubaloo, I guess is the right word to call it here, of renewed interest, of you know, a lot of movement around this series because they are currently running a Kickstarter to fund an animation project based around Cradle. And so it is technically fully funded as far as I remember. I saw it earlier today. I pitched in a little bit. I didn't want any of the rewards. I'm not like super invested in the series, but I really like this first book. So I decided to give some of my own money to the program. It's the first Kickstarter I've ever backed, I think. No, actually it's the second one. I bought a Common America comic book many years ago. So I added my own 2 cents, as it were, to the backing of this. And I'm actually excited about it. It seems pretty cool, pretty interesting. I actually really like the source material. So yeah, Unsouled is written by Will Wight, or Will Wight, or Will Wight. I think, I'm not really sure how to say his name. I'll just go with Will Wight, all right? And it's a self-published work. I think his publisher is called the Hidden Gnome Publisher, or Hidden Gnome Publishing. I can't remember. And the demographic for this is unclear, although I would call it a YA book. It's a 15-year-old main character. Most of the other characters around the story are about the same age, and it is a kind of coming-of-age story, a story about overcoming your natural difficulties and also developing as a person, right? And so I would say that this is definitely a YA type book, and I think that that's good. There's not really too much traditionally published YA that is good for male readers. Most of it is very female centric, and also it's actually most of modern YA isn't really aimed at teenagers anymore. It's aimed at like 20-year-old women, or 30-year-old women, people that kind of grew up with Harry Potter and then moved on to Hunger Games and then moved on to Sarah J. Maas, basically. And so I think it's good that there is something that young men can read, and that this is what they're reading, right? So yeah. In terms of genre here, this is a cultivation novel first and foremost. It is a type of progression fantasy. It is based around, or kind of like simulating, wuxia novels, as far as I understand it, which are Chinese progression fantasy novels. And cultivation basically means that the character has a spiritual center, and the development of the spiritual center through progression of some sort is what's going to give them more power. So it's not really like anime. Anime doesn't really go into this type of thing all that much. It has started to recently, I think. Usually anime is mostly like game-lit progression fantasy, where there's game elements. This is a little bit different, but it is in the same kind of vein, right? So yeah, and of course it's also a fantasy story. It's a second world fantasy. There is no isekai. There is no translation from one world to the other. There is no regular human into a new fantasy world kind of aspects. This is fully a secondary world. The character here is a secondary world character. He has no ties to Earth at all. And it does not currently have an adaptation, but they are working on one. I recommend you guys check out the Kickstarter. It's quite good. So yeah, ratings for this, 4.5 out of 5. I thought it was nearly perfect. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it, but there were some slight issues, and there is a very clear clunkiness to this book that comes from what I imagine was a very inexperienced writer at the time of this book's release, right? So there's no problems at all. Like, it is readable, it is understandable, but there are some slight things that I think could be tweaked, and things that hopefully don't exist in further books. And I also want to mention that you can get this first book for 99 cents, I think. However, the first collection volume, which collects the first 3 novels, I think is free currently. And I recommend that that's what you guys get. I got it myself. And I don't know if it comes in the normal novels, but in this version of the novels that I have, there's artwork at the beginning of each novel. So you have like an image of what the characters look like to start with. And I think that that's really good. So the premise here is that we follow a main character named Lyndon who is unsouled, which means that he doesn't have a proper foundation to his like energy spirit or spirit energy or whatever you want to call it. And so he is not able to be labeled or given a path initially. And that means that he is basically a cripple in his society. And he has to overcome this. So it's kind of like a general Naruto or Asta type setup, you know, like a Black Clover type thing where you follow a main character that doesn't have magic in a magic world. And it works really nicely. I like it. I think it's good. And we follow him as he decides that enough is enough and that he wants to, you know, find a way to become stronger. And so it's really good. It's really enjoyable. I really like the main character. So, yeah, I'm going to go through the plot line. I have a very extensive rundown of the plot here, but I will try to condense it because I don't think that this video needs to be that long. So, basically, it opens up with an explanation of a ceremony that is used to teach children or to get children to figure out what their path in life should be. So there's a bowl. Children put their hands in the bowl, and the bowl of water, which is actually mantra, which is spirit energy, reacts a certain way. Depending on what reaction you get out of the bowl means that that's your path, right? So there's strikers, which are people that use mantra to externally. There's rulers who basically impose their mantra on you. And then there is another one. I can't remember what it's called. And those are basically people that use mantra inwardly. And I can't remember the title for them, but each of them gets a little token that has a symbol on it. And that based on that symbol means that is your path, right? Or that is your affinity, right? The way that you're supposed to use your magic or your mantra, basically. However, Lyndon is told to come up. It is his time to be at the ceremony. And he puts his hands in the bowl and nothing happens. He has no reaction. And so he is unsouled. He is someone that has no refinement to his spirit. There is nothing basically inherent within him. And this is bad in the society of the Sacred Valley. And so he becomes a second-class citizen. Thankfully, his parents are influential enough in their village that he doesn't really suffer too much. However, he is still not a relevant person in his village. Something happens, time passes, and eventually we get to see Lyndon again going after something. Like, he is the weakest person in his village. He is the village runt. He doesn't have mantra, but he's still a very well-built young man. He's actually quite tall as well, apparently. And he's kind of, you know, well-built as well. So he still manages to be basically like as good as a human as he can be. But because of cultivation, he is weaker than everyone else. And in order to combat this, his mom has sent him out to basically a forest to try to track down a special spirit fruit, which will help him, if he eats it, to condense more mantra. And eventually, hopefully, the point is that he will find a way to get enough mantra so that his foundation, his spirit energy finally coalesces into an affinity, right, or a type. Stuff happens. He manages to get the fruit. He brings it home, and actually at this point his family is actually bickering over who should eat it. He puts his foot down. He's like, I want at least half of it. I don't care. I'm the one that had to do stuff to get it. I deserve some of it, right? And so he and his sister share it. He gives half of it to his sister Kelsa, or Kalsa, I can't remember her name. And he manages to cycle this energy, and his spirit grows. Not enough to be meaningful, but enough for him to feel better. Because of what happened with the fruit gathering, he actually has to fight someone from a different family within his clan, the Mon Keths, I think, or the Keths. Keth is the name of the person, and Mon is his last name, and his clan is Wei. So Wei Mon Keth, I think. So he has to fight this guy. And there's no way that he's going to win. So he tries to find something to do. He actually ends up talking to the village elder, which is actually an animal spirit. It's a nine-tailed fox, and it tells him, you know, you have to find a way to make your life worth living, essentially, and you have to like strive even against all odds. It's essentially what it tells him, right? And this helps him. It bolsters his feelings, and he eventually finds a tome or a parchment within the clan library that teaches him about the twin star technique or something like that. And the technique is actually the empty palm, which is basically a Hyuga ability from Naruto. He basically condenses his madra, which is pure at this point because he has not developed an affinity or a path. It's pure, and so basically that means that he is essentially the only person that can use this effectively. He condenses it into his palm, and he strikes his opponent, and he's supposed to strike them at the base of their navel or at the bottom of their stomach, where their madra is supposed to be located. And if he does it successfully, it like freaks out people because they're not used to not feeling their energy reserves, right? And so he manages to do this when he's fighting. He strikes, and he manages to strike again, which he's not supposed to, and actually make the person that he's fighting step back. And so he humiliates this person who's supposed to be very strong and shouldn't have to have any problems with Linden. He humiliates them, and so this starts a kind of a quarrel between them. However, Linden forfeits, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I deserve to lose, so I give up." And he's saved by the elder, the village elder, who basically takes his side on this issue, and thankfully he doesn't die. Eventually, time passes again, and it turns out that we have the 7-day festival, which is a festival where all of the people that live in the sacred village, which are actually divided into 3 major clans, join together to have a fighting festival, a way to kind of basically control their population, trade, insults, and political situations with each other. And Linden has to win the fight that he's in because he is 15 years old, where all the people that he's fighting are supposed to be 10-year-olds. It doesn't matter that he has weaker madra than them. He has to find a way to win. And so he prepares to do so. He prepares a trap just in case. And when the day comes, the Lee clan, which is one of the clans that comes in, unleashes an ancestor of theirs. Basically, they summon a demon, essentially. And his name is Lee Markuth. And this is a problem because he decides to start slaughtering everyone. And this is bad. It turns out that at basically this point in time, there was a higher being named Suriel who saw that there was this incursion, who saw that there was this issue happening that shouldn't have happened. And so she steps in. She saves Linden. She stops Lee Markuth. And she reverses everything. However, Linden manages to see her, talk to her, get her to tell him his future, and change his destiny, and also gets her to give him basically advice. It's more or less the same advice that Elder Whisper gave him, which is there is only one rule in this world, and that is to do everything in your path, or to do everything possible to get better at yourself, right? To cultivate, to progress across life. And she tells him something is going to happen to your town. The dread god, I think, is going to be unleashed, and everyone's going to die. The only way to save this is if you travel outside of your village, outside of your sacred valley, and become strong. And she tells him he has to be strong as 3 different people. He has to be as strong as them in order to save his world, or save his village and his valley. And so she sets him on his path. At the same time, or actually right after, he manages to finagle a way into a special school, the Heaven's Glory School. He cheats, but he manages to basically gather enough respect that they allow him to come with them. He cheats his way into it, basically. And then he manages to win the first trial at the school. and he gets a reward. This reward is actually a Wei clan heirloom that allows him to create an area where he controls an illusion. So he basically gets like genjutsu powers. And there's a lot of things that are very similar to Naruto here that I really like. I think I really appreciate it. It works really nicely. However, he gets in trouble. He gets beat up. And when he's in the hospital, he actually overhears an important conversation and gets to know where this character that he got introduced to by Suriel, called Yeren is. That was a very bad way of structuring that sentence, but I hope you guys understood. Suriel told him, find this girl Yeren. She will take you out of the valley. And now that he's in the hospital, he finds someone that has recently met her, has been beat by her, and he gets them to give him information about where to find her. Once he heals up, he goes to find her, and he interacts with her. He tells her his situation. He's like, I need you to help me. They swear an oath on each other's mantra. They do basically like what Snape and Narcissa did in Harry Potter, where they do like an unbreakable oath, and they become friends to an extent. Elder Whitehall shows up. He is a character that was important to the beginning of this part of the story. And he fights Yeren, and Yeren actually beats the shit out of him because she's stronger than basically everyone in this valley. And he runs away to a different area of the forest where he can heal up. Yeren and Linden go back to school. They sleep in his room for a night, and then the next morning they go to the treasure hall and loot it. They get in a fight, and then they go back to finish off Elder Whitehall, who is actually at the same place as Yeren's master, who was killed by the Heaven's Glory School, and that she needs to kind of basically show the proper respect to before she leaves. And this includes taking on her master's remnant, which is basically his soul animal, his soul spirit, that basically comes out of someone's body after they die and becomes a spirit animal on the world, right? And so she has to fight it. She manages to beat it, and she consumes it, and this actually raises her from one level to the other, and so she is officially stronger than everyone else in the valley. Linden manages to kill Elder Whitehall, the second kill that he has this book. It's actually very cathartic because he basically shows that he shows to himself that it doesn't matter all of the hardship that he's gone through. He has found a way twice to beat people that are like basically a whole different species from him, essentially. They are so much stronger than him, and he has managed to use his brain and his ingenuity to beat them. And so he is so happy about this. He has so much like pride in himself, and also so much like catharsis, I guess it's the right way to describe this. He just has like all of the self-confidence issues that he had don't disappear, but they're definitely alleviated by this. And so he and Yeren managed to leave the valley, and the adventure ends. And it was great. I really, really liked it. I thought it was awesome. I really love this book. There are some issues, like I mentioned, the writing is a bit clunky. And actually, the worst thing, the reason why I actually docked half a point from this is that, especially in the first half of the book, there are many times where two characters are talking, and within that same conversation, one character asks the other for information that has already been given. Now, I initially thought it was just the way that they were speaking in order to kind of exert control over Linden, but the fact that it happened so many times, even with people that weren't necessarily supposed to be Linden's betters, like technically his sister is his better, but she's also younger than him, and because it's within his family, he is still owed some level of respect, and she keeps asking him or telling him to give her information that she already got from him within the same conversation. And this was actually kind of annoying to read, because it's like, dude, within 3 pages or 3 scrolls worth of information, in terms of like scrolling through the Kindle app, you've had the same conversation point over and over again. That was like a big miss for me. It only happened in the first half of the book, so eventually he realized that the issue was there and fixed it. Or this is one of those things where, like, because he's a self-published author, he doesn't really have a good editing base or good editors, people that to work with him on that. And so it was something that he just couldn't figure out on his own, and eventually he found out a way to fix it, and that is basically the only real issue that I had with this story. So yeah, in terms of characters, the most important characters are Lyndon, then Yaren, then Suriel, Lee Markuth, because he is basically the first villain, the first time that Lyndon sees what he has to become, essentially. But also he's evil. Suriel is basically a goddess, essentially. She's still technically a person, but she has ascended so far on this cultivation tree that we have here that she is basically an angel. And even there's some like bloopers, which are like fake scenes that Will creates. And one of them is basically like she comes down like a biblically accurate angel, and he just freaks. You know, she even says, "Do not be afraid," and Lyndon just freaks. And I thought that was really funny. But these are basically the most important characters. In terms of bad guys or antagonists, besides Lee Markuth, we have Elder Whitehall and Monketh. And there's a Kazan guy. Kazan is the third clan that exists in this valley. But I don't remember his name, and he also wasn't really relevant because Lyndon beats him pretty easily twice. The only time he loses to this guy is when this guy sneak attacks, and so I didn't bother learning his name. So yeah, Elder Whitehall is basically a Jade level person, and he looks like a little kid, but he's actually really old. And Lyndon manages to kill him at the end of the story. What else? And then the Kazan guy, who Lyndon manages to kill about 3/4 through the story. The Monketh guy is the first antagonist that he faces. And he manages to beat him / lose to him in an honorable way around the first third of the book. And then Lee Markuth is basically just a plot device, essentially. But he's interesting. I really like all of the characters here. I enjoy them a lot. I really like Yaren. I think she's a really interesting, ridiculous kind of character. Although I have noticed that Will Wight likes to make these like stiff characters. Like they're all kind of how do I word this? Like in romance anime, there's always like the one girl that's quiet. I forgot the Dare type, but they're all basically like that type of Dare. I can't remember what it is. If I remember, I'll put it on the screen. But basically, they're all like quiet, collected, stiff characters. And although I like that, I think it works. I feel like it's very important that eventually we get more variety in the characters, because otherwise it's going to be kind of boring. Lyndon is a great character, though. He has a lot of earnestness to him. He has a very like likable disposition. I really enjoy this character a lot. So overall, the character work is pretty good, pretty solid. In terms of world building, it's a bit nebulous to me. This is the first cultivation novel that I actively read. I read one before that Moonquill gave me. However, I DNF'd it because I wasn't interested in the story. I just never finished reading it. Although I should go back and finish it. But I didn't really like that one. I thought it was kind of boring. The way that it was written just wasn't for me. But I like this one. Cultivation, like I mentioned, is basically a type of progression. You have to cycle your energy within your body, your spiritual energy, in such a way that it becomes stronger over time. Basically the levels, as far as I understand them, are foundation, then followed by copper, then iron, then jade is the last level that is available at the Sacred Valley. Beyond that is gold. Now, my understanding of like Asia is that jade is more important than gold to like the people of China and maybe even Japan. So I feel like jade should have been higher. However, you know, it might not be based on that. There might be a different, you know, situation why this is the way it is. But I feel like there's like intermediary levels that should be clearer. And I feel like the jump between iron to jade feels really huge. At least in terms of like how Lyndon describes the characters. And so maybe I'm missing a middle section there. But I'm not sure. Either way, those are the levels that are available. However, Suriel is so high above that she's basically a whole different beast, right? The spirit energy is everywhere. It's kind of like the Force. You can take it in through certain ways. and you can refine it through certain ways. You know, if you take it from an animal or a plant, you actually basically just get it for free. And so that's actually really useful. A lot of people want these types of items because they're really helpful, right? And there's multi-dimensional stuff that is relevant, but also not super important to this book specifically. So, you know, keep aware of that, like be aware of of what's happening there, but don't worry too much about it because it's not really relevant to the end of this story, of this first book. I think it's really important later on. And of course, our main character has a special attack because that's how these types of stories work. So, good stuff. Artwork and fan service wise, like I said, there's one piece of artwork at the beginning of the book, which I like. I thought it was nice. I think it's about, it's Lyndon and Yaren, I think. As far as I remember, that is what it is, because one character has a rope tied around them, which I think is Yaren, and the other one is a tall Asian-looking kid, which is Lyndon. No fan service though. There are definitely mentions of like characters being pretty, but nothing like gratuitous, I guess. Honestly, maybe the animation might lean more into that than the books might. I'm not really sure, but it doesn't seem like it's prevalent at all. It's not really relevant to this type of story, which is also fine. Ratings wise, I've already mentioned my issue with this, so 4.5 out of 5. Sorry, I really liked it. I think it's perfect for people that want to jump from anime and manga to reading novels. I think this is like a great transition. I'm definitely going to make a video separate from this one where I talk about that in depth. I have been wanting to make this series of videos on the channel about what weebs should read, which is basically like, here's some, you know, Western novels that might appeal to you if you're someone that only reads manga and watches anime, you know, something like that. So I think this is one of those. I think this is a great starter novel. If you're someone that has never really read before, you like action stuff, and you want to kind of start reading, I think this is a good introduction. And it also almost feels a little bit epic fantasy-esque. It reminds me a lot of the Stormlight Archive, which, you know, it's kind of crazy because this is definitely a very, like, like this is like, you know, a strawberry, and the Stormlight Archive is like a watermelon. Like, they're very, very different. But something about them feels very familiar to me, very similar, and I think that's good. It might also be kind of flattering for Will Wight to be compared to Brandon Sanderson. I saw him make a video today where he was wearing a little sports jacket the same way he does, the same way Brandon Sanderson does, so he might like that comparison. I'm not really sure, but either way, I recommend you guys read this. I recommend you guys check out the Kickstarter, and definitely leave a review and stuff like that for Will Wight. And also comment down below, let me know what you thought. Thank you so much for watching, and see you guys later.